In this demonstration you learn how to add a combo box to the friend detail view so that the user can select a favorite programming language for a friend. You will also learn how you can allow the selection of an empty entry in that combo box. Here I've opened the friend detail view. Now we want to add a label and a combo box for the favorite programming language. So let's add two more row definitions here for the label and for the combo box. When I scroll down, you can see that I have already created the label and also the combo box. But in addition, we need to move the stack panel with the Save and Delete button to the grid row 9. Between 7 and 9, we have an empty row that takes the leftover space because the height property is by default star. And so the stack panel with the buttons will be displayed at the bottom because it is in this row definition. Now we can start to implement the combo box. The item source property can be bound to the programming languages property of our friend detail view model that is in the data context of this friend detail view. As you know, this programming languages property contains lookup items. So we can set the display member path property of that combo box to the display member property of a lookup item. When we create the lookup item in the lookup data service, we assign the name of the programming language to the display member property of the lookup item. So this display member property is actually what we want to display, because it contains the name of the programming language. Beside the display member path property, we can also set the selected value path property to ID. The lookup item has an ID property. Setting the selected value path property to the ID property of the lookup item allows us to bind the selected value property to an integer property that we can use to select a lookup item in this combo box. The integer property that we bind here is the friend's favorite language ID. And as we want to set this property also when the user selects a value in the combo box, we use here a two-way data binding. Now our combo box is set up, but there is still one thing we need to do. As you might remember, this friend property is not the friend model, it's the friend wrapper. So we need to create this favorite language ID property on the friend wrapper. Let's open up our friend wrapper class. Here in the friend wrapper class, we have the properties ID, first name, last name and email. Now I just add an additional property here called favorite language ID. It's of type nullable int and it uses the getValue and setValue methods of the model wrapper base class. Now we should be fine and we can run the application. I select a friend and we see here our new combo box for the favorite language. Let's open up the combo box and let's select C#. I click Save. Now let's navigate to another friend and here for Urs I select TypeScript and I hit Save. Now I select Sarah and you see she has no favorite language. I select Urs again and he has TypeScript. And I select myself again and I have C#. So our combo box and the lookup logic works as expected. But there is one problem. After the user has selected a language for a friend, he can't select an empty entry again. Now let me show you how you can add such an empty entry to this favorite language combo box. To allow the user the selection of an empty entry in the combo box, we should have such an entry in our programming languages property. This means we need to have a lookup item that represents the empty entry. Having this lookup item here in the programming languages property in the view model would allow you to write a unit test for this empty entry logic. But where could we add this special lookup item to the programming languages observable collection? When I scroll up, you can see the load programming languages lookup async method. This is the method where we have implemented the logic to load the lookup and fill the programming languages observable collection. After we have called the clear method, but before we add the actual lookup items to the programming languages observable collection, we could add a special item that represents the empty entry. And for this special item, I want to create a separate class that inherits from lookup item. So I go here to the lookup item class and I add another class in this file that I call null lookup item. It should represent the empty entry. I inherit this class from lookup item. I define also an ID property here and I just return null for this ID. I make the property not of type int but of type nullable int. Now when I hover this property, you can see that we get a warning here as it is hiding the ID property of the lookup item base class. So let's just add the keyword new here to tell Visual Studio that we know what we are doing. Now with this new null lookup item class, we can go back to our friend detail view model and we can add here an instance of that class to our programming languages property before we actually add the real lookup items. So I just say here new null lookup item. And I run the application. Now I select myself, and here you can see we have an empty entry in our combo box. Now I select this empty entry and I click Save. I navigate to OS, here is still TypeScript, and I navigate back to myself, and the favorite language is not set anymore. Now even for the null lookup item that we have added to the programming languages property, we could set the display member property if we want. Let's just set it to a simple dash. Now when I run the application, we see that dash for every friend that does not have a favorite programming language. Now we are done with this favorite language lookup in the Friend Organizer application. Let's wrap up what you have learned in this module. In this module, we have added a programming language entity to the Friend Organizer application. We have seeded and migrated the database with Entity Framework Code First. Now a friend has a favorite programming language. As we have seen, on the database we have now a foreign key from the friend table to the programming language table. You also learned in this module how to use a combo box with data binding so that the user can select the favorite programming language for a friend in the friend detail view. In the next module, we will extend the friend model so that a friend can have phone numbers. Welcome to the module Working with Object Graphs. My name is Thomas Claudius Huber, and in this module we will extend the Friend Organizer application so that a friend can have phone numbers. Let's take a look at the module outline. We start this module by creating the friend phone number entity. We will also add a phone numbers property to the friend entity so that a friend can have phone numbers. After we have created the friend phone number entity, we will also migrate and seed the database with Entity Framework Code First. Now when you look at this relationship, you might notice that it's a one-to-many relationship. A friend can have many phone numbers. These relationships, one-to-many and also many-to-many, are often referred to as object graphs. Now after we have created the entity, we will add a data grid to the friend detail view, and we will also extend the friend detail view model so that it can provide the friend phone numbers to that data grid. When we are done with this step, we can display existing phone numbers in the user interface. The next step is to implement the logic so that the user can add and remove phone numbers in the UI by using commands from the friend detail view model. Now let's start with the friend phone number entity. In this demonstration, we create the friend phone number entity and we will migrate and seed the database with Entity Framework Code First. Let's switch to Visual Studio. In the model project of the Friend Organizer application, I have already created this friend phone number class. As you can see, it has an ID property and it has a number property of type string that has the data annotations phone and required. The friend phone number class has also a friend property of type friend and a friend ID property of type int. So a friend phone number belongs to a friend. On the friend class, I have also defined this relationship. So when I scroll down, you can see here the phone numbers property of type iCollection of friend phone number. I initialized this phone numbers property in the constructor of the friend class with an empty collection of friend phone numbers. So far, these are the changes I have made to the model. I have also adjusted the DB context. So let's open up the Friend Organizer DB context here. When I scroll down a bit, you can see here a new property called friend phone numbers that is of type dbset friend phone number. To have at least one phone number in the database, I have also adjusted our configuration class that contains the seed method. When I scroll down, you can see here I use the friend phone numbers dbset and I call the add or update method. I distinguish the phone numbers by the number property. You can see I want to add or update a single friend phone number with the number +49 123456778. On that friend phone number instance, I set the friend ID property to the ID of the first friend in the context. To ensure that this first friend has already an ID, it needs to be saved to the database. That's the reason why I call here save changes on the DB context before I call the add or update method on the friend phone numbers DB set. So when I scroll up, you can see here the first friend is Thomas Huber, so I will get this new friend phone number. Now we have implemented the DB context and also the seeding in this configuration class. So let's go to the Package Manager console and let's add a database migration by using the add migration command. I call the migration edit friend phone numbers. And I hit enter. No migrations configuration type was found in the assembly friend organizer UI. That's correct because I forgot to change the default project here to the data access project that contains our configuration. Now let's run the command again. And here we go, we have a new migration in the migrations folder of our data access project. As you can see, this migration creates the friend phone number table. This friend phone number table has also a foreign key to the friend table. The cascade delete is also set to true by default on that foreign key. That means when you delete the friend phone numbers will also be deleted. This is good and actually what we want. Now let's go to the Package Manager console and let's apply that migration by using the update database command. Okay, the migration has been applied and the seed method was executed. So now when I open up the Server Explorer, we should see that new table in our database. Here we go, we have a friend phone number table. When I right-click that table and I select Show Table Data, then we can see the phone number that we have seeded. Now let's implement the friend detail view and the friend detail view model so that we can display this phone number in the user interface. In this demonstration, we will add a data grid to the friend detail view and we will implement the logic to manage phone numbers in the friend detail view model. You will also learn how you can display validation errors in the data grid. Now let's start with the friend detail view. Here I've opened the friend detail view of the friend organizer application. In the grid of this friend detail view, we have a single row definition with a height of star, as star is the default value for the height property. This means that this row definition takes the leftover space in this grid, and it's a good place where we can put our data grid in. So when you count the row definitions, you will see that this row definition is the one with the index 8. And when I scroll down, you can see that I have already put a dock panel into this grid row 8 with a margin of 10. In this dock panel, I have a stack panel that is docked to the right side. The stack panel contains two buttons to add and remove a phone number. And the command properties of these buttons are bound to properties of the friend detail view model that we will see later. Then I have a data grid that fills the rest of the space in this dock panel, and its item source property is bound to a phone numbers property from the friend detail view model. The selected item property is bound to a selected phone number property of the friend detail view model, and we don't want to auto-generate the columns. Instead, I have just a single data grid text column in this data grid with the header phone numbers. As you can see, this data grid text column is bound to the number property of a friend phone number. It is using a two-way data binding, and I've specified the update source trigger property to property changed, so that every change in the user interface is written back immediately to the bound object. You will see all the properties that are bound here in the friend detail view model in the next clip. Now let's run the application and let's see what the friend detail view looks like. But before we do this, I want to go to the main window and I want to change the height and width of this window. I want to set the height to 700 and the width of this window to 1000. In addition, I want to set the window startup location property to center screen. Now let's run the application. I select a friend and the friend detail view comes up. And here we have our phone numbers data grid and the add and remove button. But as you know already, Thomas Huber has a single phone number in the database. Now let's implement the logic in the friend detail view model to load this phone number.